Here is the review for your test tomorrow. We'll start with Peyton McHenry to answer this question. Fill in the blank. Number one, on November 23rd, 1963, from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m., family members and blank were allowed to pay their last respects to President Kennedy. Government dignitaries. Very good. Government dignitaries. Okay, Emily, my dear. Number two, the original plan for November 24th, 1963 was that the President's body would blank under the Capitol Rotunda for all Americans to honor him until 9 p.m. that evening, and that blank is in quotation marks. The original plan for November 24th, 1963 was that President Kennedy's body would blank, in quotation marks, under the Capitol Rotunda for all Americans to honor him until 9 p.m. that evening. What would it do in the Capitol Rotunda? Lay in state. Very good. Lay in state.
That's in quotation marks?
Yep. I'll have them in there for you.
Oh.
All right, number three, Meg. Secret Service agent blank retrieved a pair of scissors for Jackie Kennedy in the afternoon of November 24th, 1963, in which he assumed she cut a lock of the President's hair before the coffin was closed in the East Room of the White House. Clint Hill, Secret Service agent Clint Hill, yep. Joe, number four, by 1 a.m. on Monday, November 25th, 1963, approximately blank people had filed past the President's coffin. 76,000 is correct. Porter, the week before his assassination, President Kennedy visited Arlington National Cemetery, marveling at the view from the blank, prompting Mrs. Kennedy to choose a spot below the view to bury her husband. Porch of what? Which is called the what? So that is the answer. What's his house called? Where's it at? It's called the Arlington House. Very good. Arlington House. Andrew, the only two civilized country in the world not represented at the Kennedy funeral was Albania and blank. The only two civilized country in the world not represented at the Kennedy funeral was Albania and blank. What other country? We don't get along with them that well. But it's not Russia. China. Very good. Julie, as the President's body was laid to rest, blank flew over Arlington National Cemetery, followed by Air Force One, which tipped its wing in a final tribute to the President. As the President's body was laid to rest, blank flew over Arlington National Cemetery, followed by Air Force One, which tipped its wing in tribute to the President. 50 fighter jets. That's exactly right. 50 fighter jets. Perfect. Brian, the famous playing of taps during the burial that resulted in the broken note was performed by Army bugler blank. Famous playing of taps during the burial that resulted in the broken note was performed by Army bugler blank. Keith Clark. Very good. Aurora, the man that commented in his book, The Death of a President, about the broken note was journalist blank. William Manchester. Yep, William Manchester. Sully, the name of the eulogy given by Senator Mike Mansfield in honor of President Kennedy was called, quote, it's in quotes, so you gotta have it exactly. The name of the eulogy given by Senator Mike Mansfield in honor of President Kennedy was called, quote, in a moment it was no more.
Who said that?
Mike Mansfield. Okay, back at you, Sully. Blank was the name of the riderless horse in the Kennedy processional led by Army Private First Class blank. Okay, was the name of the riderless horse in the Kennedy processional led by Army First Class, Private First Class blank. Who led the horse?
Oh, can you look?
Yeah. Well, I asked both. Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Blank was the name of the riderless horse in the Kennedy processional led by Army Private First Class blank.
Blackjack and Arthur Carlson.
Arthur Carlson. Very good. Did you guys see the little video on YouTube on Arthur Carlson?
Yeah.
I showed this class there. I showed you the one on Keith Carter, but I don't think I showed you the, I'll show it to you when you're done, it's pretty good. Okay, Aurora Blank performed both the funeral mass and the burial ceremony for President John F. Kennedy. Now you're gonna have to, all three of these, because you don't call a priest by their last name.
Oh, I have to have like the whole name.
Yeah.
That's a team.
Who?
Oh, the St. Matthew, or no,
Yeah.
the Richard Cardinal Cushing.
Richard Cardinal Cushing performed both the funeral mass and the burial ceremony for President John F. Kennedy.
We're gonna have to have that memorized, like, we have to write down, not just.
These are filled in blank,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, Brian? The journalist that assisted Mrs. Kennedy in developing the myth of Camelot for President Kennedy and his administration was blank. The journalist that assisted Mrs. Kennedy in developing the myth of Camelot for President Kennedy and his administration was Theodore H. White. Very good. I want, first and last names, the whole schmeal on this. Okay, Julie. By the time the doors of the United States Capitol Rotunda were closed at 10 a.m. on the morning of November 25th, 1963, it was estimated that approximately how many people made their last respects to President Kennedy?
300,000 to 500.
I'll take anything between 300,000 and 500,000. If you do 333,000, 333, I'll give that to you. Anything between 300,000 and 500,000. So be creative.
By the 10?
Huh?
By 10 a.m.?
By 10 a.m. the morning of November 25th.
359,200.
Yeah, whatever, anything in between there. Okay, Joe. The publication that Mrs. Kennedy used to best sum up the life of her late husband was a paragraph from the book. Blank. Now can you write out?
Literal man who wrote, wait, no, whoa.
The publication that Mrs. Kennedy used to best sum up the life of her late husband was a paragraph from the book. Not very courageous if you can't get this. I have to make you do a profile on this.
Oh. Profiles and careers.
Oh, profiles and career, incredible.
I didn't, did I? Did you write that down?
Huh?
Evidently not.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't.
All right, here we go, Porter. I want you to list 3 of the 5 items that Jackie Kennedy placed in her husband's coffin on November 24th, 1963 in the East Room of the White House. 3. And Andrew, you're going to do the other 2 he misses, so be prepared. 5 things that Jackie Kennedy placed in her husband's coffin.
A letter written to her husband by her.
Yep,
A letter from Caroline.
yep.
A scribbled piece of paper from
Okay, and what's the other 2, Andrew?
John. A pair of gold cufflinks.
Yep,
And a scrimshaw that brings the presidential seal.
very good. Megan, what were the 2 things Robert Kennedy placed in his brother's coffin on November 24th, 1963?
PT-109 type pin and an engraved silver rosary.
Exactly right, very good. PT-109 tie pin and an engraved silver rosary. Hey Emily, my dear, name 1 of the body bearers that were quoted concerning the moving of the president's coffin from the Capitol Rotunda onto the horse-drawn caisson at the bottom of the Capitol steps. I gave you 2 quotes, I told you you didn't have to write them down, but who were those guys that quoted? Give me 1 of the 2. You got a list of 8 of them there, maybe you can take a 1 in 8 guess.
James.
Felder, he's 1, he was quoted. Who's the other one? Who's the other one?
Kate.
No, Hayden, who's the other one? These your cheeks are awful good. You say.
Who's
Who's the other one that was quoted, huh? No? Are you sure? I thought it was cheeks. You okay? Okay, who's the other one?
You're kind of timid.
Who was the other one?
I love when she goes.
Yes! Timothy F.
Oh.
Ah, that's all they do. That's a 1, 2, 3. Ah!
I get it. It just works so well.
I got it. Okay, Julie. What did John F. Kennedy Jr. do of significance following the funeral mass for President Kennedy at St. Matthew's Cathedral?
He saluted his father at the bottom of the steps.
Yep, he saluted his father's coffin, or father. Coffin would be better. He saluted the coffin at the bottom of the steps, yep. All right, this is really good. I want anybody that gets this, I'm going to give 5 points extra credit on the test, but you have to raise your hand, okay? Here's the question. What predicament was President Kennedy going to be in if he had not been assassinated in 1963? What predicament would he have, I'll finish the question. What predicament was President Kennedy going to be in if he had not been assassinated and would have been elected to 2 terms in office?
Civil rights.
No?
Lots of like stuff was coming up about him that his brother was
Oh.
trying to
No.
get fired.
Wasn't it like his,
Okay.
The governor?
No, I was gonna
Okay,
say.
go ahead, Joe.
like his scandals in office were starting to
No.
come back?
The governor and the
No.
senator?
Let me read again. What predicament was President Kennedy going to be in if he had not been assassinated and would have been elected to 2 terms in office?
Got it.
Stuck with LBJ?
Nope.
Um,
Let me read it to you one more time.
Okay.
Say 2 terms?
What predicament was President Kennedy going to be in if he had not been assassinated and would have been elected to 2 terms in office?
Mike Wallace?
Nope.
He was unnecessary.
was
Nope,
there
he would have
one-
been, he would have been,
He wouldn't be as remembered.
nope, he would have been too old to start a new career
Oh,
and too young to write his
Darn
memoirs.
it.
That's his predicament. He would have been too old to start a new career and too young to write his memoirs. Okay, moving on. Don't tell the other class now, they'll get 5 freedoms. Okay, the last thing, yeah, I'll just tell you, you have to be able to write down in detail 4 of the 19 Lincoln-Kennedy coincidences that I gave you. 4 of the 19. Any 4 you want. 4 of the 19.
Bless you. Thank you.